All right, let's look at some examples of participles and their other endings. At the top of page 158, there are 4 examples there. We have Lusan, and when we look at Lusan, hopefully we recognize the sigma and we start thinking already, ooh, aorist. If we're thinking pas pasapan, Lusan, we might recognize that as a nominative or accusative neuter singular form of luo, and its aorist. Graphanti, hopefully we recognize the verb grapho, and we see that there's no psi there. So that tells us that this is the present stem. So it's the present participle of grapho. And then we look at the end and we see the unti ending, and maybe we recognize that as the masculine or neuter dative singular ending. El thontes, again, erkomai is such a common word that hopefully we recognize el thontes as being formed on the second aorist stem of erkomai. And then we have the masculine nominative plural of the second aorist participle of erkomai. And for usin, usin is a is from the verb ami. So when you get participles of the verb ami, they basically just look like the endings of the uh, of luon endings. So we get on, and then on ta, and on tos, etc. All those endings, that's what ami looks like in its present participle form. So let's get rid of those. So they're out of the way. Take the eraser. Okay. Um, so now let's go down and look at um, the page 158, we have the hint where it says the participle has basic forms, which is essentially a verbal matter. It's about tenses. So we're looking at the stem to see if it's a present stem or an aorist stem to tell us what tense the participle is. But then we have to look at the endings, and that's a separate matter. And that now we're thinking nouns, because this will tell us the particular gender number case of the participle. Now, know too, though, that you're most of the time not going to be creating these forms from the lexical form. Instead, you're going to be coming across these forms and having to figure out what they are to parse them. So in practice 14.2, we're going to only do numbers 1 through 9 and not worry about numbers 10 through 15, because normally we're never going to be working in that direction. So more important than the first hint on the participles is the second one, is that when faced with a Greek participle, think about the sequence. First of all, which of the basic forms is it from? And then which particular instance of that form is it? So what root is it? In other words, which is going to tell you the verb it's from, but also whether it's present or aorist stem. And then the ending, which again is going to tell you the gender number case. The complete formation of participles, both active participles and deponent participles, is there on page 159. So be sure and take a look at those, maybe even save that page for future reference. But let's take a look at these 9 examples in practice 14.2. So I look at balontes and immediately I recognize the 2 lambdas. The 2 lambdas tell me that this is the present stem. And then I look at ontes and I recognize, oh, that's the masculine plural nominative form of the participle. So there you go. That's that one. Phonesas, we have the sigma, which is the clue for the aorist tense. We also have this eta, and if we know the verbs, that is a clue that this is a stem that ends in epsilon. So now we're thinking phoneo, and we recognize that the ending is the nominative masculine singular form of the aorist of phoneo. We have erkomenize. So again, we recognize erkomai as and so we recognize the present stem. So we always already know that this is a present tense participle. And then we see the omanais, and now we know that this is a dative feminine plural ending for erkomeni. Pemsan, we're going to recognize this C right away and know that this is pempo, but with a sigma, and that tells us that this is an aorist form. And then we look at the alpha nu ending, and we recognize that as the neuter singular ending, and of course it'll be the same in the nominative or the accusative. Dioxanti, that one, it was a vocabulary word that I had actually forgotten. So I just wanted to tell you about that because that will happen. You'll run across a form and you'll think, ooh, unlike, for example, Pempo or Erkomai, I don't immediately recognize this form, but I see this Xi here. Now, this Xi could be part of the lexical form, but we also have an alpha. That makes me think that the lexical form doesn't have a Xi. So then I looked it up, and sure enough, we have DO-CO. So we have the kappa, which when added to the sigma gave us this Xi. So now we know that this is an aorist participle, and the ending we have anti, we recognize that as the masculine or neuter form of the dative singular. Idun tone is another one I had to think about a little bit because we have on tone, and all of that is the ending. And I'm looking at the id and I'm thinking, what verb can I think of that that this could connect to? And then I remembered horao. And horao, of course, has the second aorist stem that I think of it as a done, but of course a done is there because we've added an epsilon augment in its sort of naked stem without its epsilon augment. It's just iota delta. And so now I know that this is an aorist participle, and I look at the, did I copy that right? Yeah. I look at the ending and it tells me that this is a masculine or neuter plural genitive ending. It's not feminine because feminine would have a different stem, a different beginning, a middle part here to the stem. It would be uson or something like that. El Pidzusan, now we have, this is a present stem. I recognize this as al pizzo, a present tense verb that I know. And we have the usan. Now we recognize this is a feminine ending, and this is accusative singular at the end. And then agerantas. So this is agero. We might remember that it has an unusual future stem, but its aorist stem is exactly the same as its present stem. It's a liquid verb with this rho right here, which is why there's no sigma. But we have the alpha that clues us in that this is still an aorist verb, an aorist participle. And so we have the alpha sigma ending, which tells us that it's masculine accusative plural of that form. The last one I didn't write down because there wasn't quite room, but we have dechomenoi, dechomai. It's pretty easy. It's a feminine form. And we have the masculine nominative plural ending oi. And so there you go. We've parsed dechomenoi. I know I moved kind of quickly. Hopefully, it made sense. I tried to take you through the steps that we think about as we're trying to identify these verbs. You can always let me know if you have questions. And of course, we'll get more practice as we work through the examples together. Thanks for listening.